2 days ago, the biggest sporting event on the entire planet wrapped up about 20 minutes from New York City when Spain beat Argentina in extra time to win a World Cup the United States spent this whole summer co-hosting with Mexico and Canada. If you watched any of it, you already know football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, just had its biggest moment in American history. So today we're asking the question a lot of people are suddenly Googling. What would it actually take to own one of these clubs? Not a national team, an actual club, the kind that plays almost every single week of the year. This isn't really a video about you buying one, it's a video about understanding an industry that just quietly became one of the hottest investments on the planet. One that regular people, celebrities, and billionaires are all fighting over at completely different price points. And I promise you, the price range on this thing is going to break your brain. Let's get into it. Here's the first thing that surprises people. There's no single price tag for a football club. Depending on which one you pick, you could spend less than a house in the suburbs or more than the GDP of an entire small country. Let's start at the cheap end, because that story is genuinely insane. In 2020, two Hollywood actors, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, bought a football club most Americans had never heard of, called Wrexham, tucked away in a small town in Wales. This wasn't some random pickup either. Wrexham is the third oldest professional football club on the entire planet, founded back in 1864, and by the time Reynolds and McElhenney showed up, it had fallen all the way down to the fifth tier of English football, essentially the minor leagues of the minor leagues. The price for the entire club? Around $2.5 million, less than plenty of houses in Los Angeles. 5 years, 3 straight promotions, and one hit documentary later, the club has been valued as high as $475 million, though some football finance experts think that number is inflated and the real figure sits closer to a third of that. Either way, it's one of the greatest returns in modern sports history, and it proves something wild. At the very bottom of the pyramid, owning a real professional football club is closer to buying a nice house than it is to buying an empire. But climb that pyramid even a little and the numbers explode fast. Newcastle United, an actual Premier League club, sold for around $400 million back in 2021. Arsenal, one of the most recognized clubs on the planet, changed hands for roughly $800 million. Manchester United was bought by the Glazer family for under $1 billion back in 2005, and by the time the family explored selling a few years later, they set an asking price of £6 billion, which is north of $7 billion. And then there's Chelsea, sold in 2022 in a record-setting deal worth $5.2 billion, the most expensive sports team sale in history at the time. So depending on how big your ambition is, owning a football club can cost you the price of a starter home or more money than it's taken to buy most NFL franchises in history. And here's the part almost nobody outside of England knows about. You can't just show up with a suitcase of cash anymore. As of this year, England has a brand new government agency called the Independent Football Regulator, and it has real legal teeth. Before you're allowed to own any club across the top 5 tiers of English football, more than 100 clubs in total, you now have to pass a formal background check run by the government itself, covering your honesty, your integrity, and whether your money is actually clean and stable. That review can legally take up to 5 months. This law only became fully active a couple of months ago, which means the entire ownership game changed in real time, right as American interest in the sport hit an all-time high. And even once you clear that hurdle and your money actually lands in the club's account, you still don't get to just buy a championship. The Premier League currently caps how much money a club is allowed to lose, roughly $135 million over any 3-year stretch. And starting this exact season, a brand new rule limits how much of a club's own revenue it's allowed to spend on player wages and transfers. Go past that limit, and the league can dock you points before a ball is even kicked. Germany takes it even further. Fans there are legally required to hold majority voting power at most clubs, meaning a billionaire literally cannot buy full control the way they can in England. None of these obstacles have slowed the buying spree down, and there's a simple reason. When the Premier League broke away and rebranded itself back in 1992, its clubs combined for about £200 million in revenue for the entire season. Today, the league's revenue is up more than 2,800%, past £6 billion a year, fueled by global broadcast deals, global merchandise, and a fan base spread across every time zone on Earth. Football clubs didn't just get more popular over the last 3 decades, they got dramatically more profitable. And that's the real reason billionaires keep lining up for a government background check and a bidding war just for the right to own one. And once you're actually in charge, this isn't some passive rich person hobby. It's one of the most emotionally brutal investments in business. You don't get to control the product on the field. One bad refereeing decision, one injury to your best player, one disappointing season, and your club can get relegated, which can wipe out the majority of its broadcast revenue in a single summer. Fans will protest outside your own stadium no matter how much money you've spent trying to fix things. Chelsea's current ownership group has already poured nearly £800 million of their own money into the club on top of the original purchase price, and by some estimates, still might not turn a profit on the whole deal. Owning a football club isn't like owning a fast food franchise with a manual and a training program. It's closer to gambling, just with a stadium full of people watching you do it. So why do people keep lining up for this specifically? Because when it actually works, the payoff is unlike almost any other asset on Earth. And here's the twist most Americans have no idea about. This deeply British institution is quietly being run by us. As of this year, 11 of the 20 Premier League clubs are majority owned by Americans. And if you count partial ownership, that number climbs to 13. 4 of the league's most famous clubs, Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Chelsea, are all American-owned. It doesn't stop at the top division either. One tier down, in the Championship, Wrexham isn't even the only American-owned club with its own reality show. Birmingham City is backed by a group that includes Tom Brady and has its own behind-the-scenes documentary running right alongside Wrexham's is. The country that spent decades barely watching this sport now quietly controls a huge chunk of its most valuable league. So do you actually want to own a football club? Realistically, almost none of us ever will, and honestly, most of us were never going to pass a government integrity check and sign a wire transfer with 9 zeros just to own a team that could still lose on a random Tuesday night. But now you know exactly what's happening every time some American name shows up as the new owner of a club that's been around since the 1800s. Somebody bet an enormous amount of money on a 90-minute game they can't fully control the outcome of, passed the background check that's now written into actual law, and became the newest name inside a very old, very global obsession. And maybe that's the actual headline here. A sport that most America only checked in on every 4 years just quietly became one of the most competitive ownership markets on the planet, with a Welsh 5th-tier team turning into a 9-figure asset, and the British government now deciding who's even allowed to play. 2 days after the entire world watched the biggest game on the planet play out in New Jersey, that obsession has never been bigger in this country. See you in the next one.